All right, all right. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the East Coast or West Coast. This is Patrick Dankwa from currently the Human Design Perspective, but it's going to be Raw to Real podcast. And what we do is we have entrepreneurs, we have people come in to share their journey, the obstacles that they've overcome, the challenges that they've faced, and how they've found fierce alignment and they've found out who they are and they've found their purpose and they're using that purpose and their gifts to share it to the world, to share it with people, right? I feel like this is extremely empowering. I mention this all the time. When I rod a reel is because there's freedom in surrendering. When we surrender, we can find our purpose to who we are, who we're supposed to be, and then we can make impact into this world, right? We can elevate ourselves, but we can also elevate other people. And I know we know the journey is difficult. It's not easy. It takes courage for us to be in fierce alignment. It takes courage for us to be who we are. But when we do that, our lives change, people's lives change. And I know there's pressure to do this and pressure to do that. And there's conditioning and there's stress and we have to get through the muck. But when we're in alignment, we're living our truth. We're living fiercely in our truth and we're sharing that with other people. And today, I have Kelly, who is living in her truth, who is going to speak her truth, and who's here to share her truth with us. So, Kelly, welcome to the show.
Hello, and hi, Patrick.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm
Good, good.
good.
Fantastic. And I want to give you an introduction. I know some stuff, and I'll hand it over to you. But I know
For
Kelly's a
sure.
transformational coach. We've talked, so I know she doesn't need a long introduction. But what I love about Kelly is she's really helping high performing millennials go from burnout and confusion to a place of clarity and confidence and freedom, which we all can benefit from, right? She's really helping her clients really shift and transition, right? Connect with their professional and personal pursuits, reclaim their joy, becoming magnetic, and getting into everything they desire. And she's going to speak today about her journey, how she's found alignment. She's going to speak through the challenges that she's had to overcome. She's going to talk about the importance of doing the shadow work, doing the dark, doing the dirt,
Mm.
figuring it out, because it's all part of that transformational journey. And she's going to talk about avoiding burnout, some tips that we can all use. And then we're going to get into her human design. We're going to do a reading as well. So, Kelly, welcome again. And I hope that introduction was good. And if I was trying to get all
Yeah, that was so
your
good. I was
all
like, yeah. I was like, yes. Do the dirty work. Do the
right,
shadow work. Be
absolutely
magnetic.
right.
um,
It's all of
and
that,
have
right?
fun. Yeah, and like have fun doing it as well. It doesn't have to be like so serious all the time.
I like that. I like that.
Mhm.
I love that you said that because I came with the serious. I'm like, it's going to be like that, and you're just like, hey, we can have fun in the. So I figured, why don't we hand the mic over to you and let you introduce the other side of you? Like, I'm curious to know how you got here, right? And how
Mm.
you kind of got to this
Mhm.
place where you're helping people. Like, you just talked about transformation being fun. And sometimes I look at transformation and shadow work and all these things. And I think the misconception sometimes is like, okay, you must have come from this like toxic upbringing and things were not fun and things were really bad. And then that just carried through this journey of life. But I know your upbringing
Mhm.
was fun. You had a fun family. You're someone that smiled a lot. You came from a healthy family, but you still had to kind of navigate through things. So maybe I'll pass it to you to share
Mhm.
some of that with us.
Yeah, I mean, just on that note, everyone has their thing, right? Their story is coming from something.
Mm,
Um, and I definitely had my own like personal struggles and family struggles. But at the same time, I had such a blessed childhood and like a blessed upbringing that I'm so grateful for. But it almost for anyone out there who's like, like yeah, like I come from a really beautiful family and like, maybe we struggled a little bit financially or like my parents were blue collar and we couldn't afford everything. We didn't go on big like fancy trips, but like I still have anxiety or I still like face stress in my life and I still have these things that I'm working through and these like limiting beliefs and all these like the shadow parts of themselves that they're working through. No one's perfect, right?
mm,
um and I almost find it harder when that happens, you know, when you have like little T trauma and not like big T trauma or big
Mm.
things that you're like, I know that like experiencing this has really changed who I am as a person or really impacted me
Right.
or had like, yeah, was like super traumatizing. And like sometimes it's, it's easier to address that.
Yes.
Um, it's not easier to go through, but it's
Right.
easier to address it because it's so clear. You see it.
Yes.
But, like, it's that little T stuff where it's hard to see. It's like where you really have to dive into the subconscious to unravel, like, why you are the way you are or why you self-sabotage in certain ways or why you get anxious about certain things
Mhm.
because they're not necessarily conscious memories.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we're going deep real fast.
Yeah. Hey, let's. I
Oh,
love
brother.
bring
Let's
it all.
do
She's like, listen, let's dive right into it. This is what's. But
it. But
oh, sorry.
but
Go
yeah,
ahead.
to give you, I guess, a little bit of background, I know you said, like, how'd you get to this? How'd you get here? Well, so funny enough, I'm actually this conversation that we're having and, like, the topic around just, like, alignment is so perfect because just a month ago, I moved from Toronto to Vancouver
Oh,
and, ended a
congratulations.
relationship and moved out here. Thanks, yeah.
Did you say ended a relationship and moved out here?
Yes.
Okay.
And you know what? I have met so many people out here who were like, "Oh my god, I did the same a year ago, 5 years ago," and I'm like, "What? What is up with
That
us?"
that's
Anyway.
interesting. You know, and I had a friend who did the same thing. Like he ended a relationship and then he posted on social media. He's like, "I'll be in Vancouver for a year." I'm like, "Wait, what happened?" He's like, "Ah, why not?"
And this man that I ran into who's, like, much older, he lives in my building, and he was like he's asking me like, "Oh, like, where'd you move from? This and that." And he goes, "You know, Vancouver's full of broken hearts." And I was like, "Why is everyone has the same story
I love that.
if they moved here?" It's really funny. Not funny. Broken hearts are not funny,
No,
but
broken hearts are not funny, but I love like like it's all like trying to also hopefully find alignment too because I feel like
Mhm.
so much weight that's like you drop when you're out of a relation. You just like open up this space,
Oh my
especially
gosh.
if it's not serving you anymore or it's time. I won't say that every relationship is leaves because it's toxic, but you just realize it's time. It
Mhm.
just opens so much space energetically for things to come in your aura.
Yeah.
So like it's always a good thing when people have come to that realization. So
Oh,
congratulations.
yeah. Yeah, it wasn't an easy one to come to. But yeah, that's where I'm at now. So I just moved here a month ago. I was born and raised in Toronto, and essentially the reason why I ever got into this work is kind of um, there's like a few reasons, but essentially when I was in high school, and I know I shared this story with Patrick a little while back, and I won't give you all like the dirty details, but I
No,
essentially just
share. You go. This is your time.
Okay,
This is
I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, but,
your
um, yeah, when I was in high school, I, essentially went through something that sparked, like it almost felt like someone lit, like, a fire of anxiety within me. Like, I was always a really intuitive kid, really, like, um just, like, a happy, creative,
Mm.
intuitive, like, friendly, charismatic kid, and it literally felt like this experience literally sparked a fire in me that created this like, almost like a forest fire, uh, like, anxiety that just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew to a point where it turned into OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which, um, always annoys me when people are like, "I'm so OCD." I'm like, "But, like, you have no idea." Like, dude,
Like
are you
this,
sure?
I've lived it. You don't know
I
it. Yes.
Yeah. And, like, I meet people who are like, "No, like, I actually lived it." I'm like, "Okay, you so get that." And they're always like, "Yeah, I'm annoyed when people say that too." Because
Right?
like,
'Cause it's a term that people just throw around.
they just throw it around, and you're like, "I'm telling you, man, you do not wanna have it."
Yeah.
Like, not fun. And it was so, like, um disabling. Like, I just, like, I couldn't really function, to be honest. Like, knowing now, like, stepping out of it and knowing who I was before, I was like, I was totally lost at that point.
Okay.
Like, you are so it is a, uh, s you are not the disorder itself,
Mhm.
but you're experiencing it, and it's almost like it just takes over your full body and your
Right,
full nervous system, and,
right.
like, it takes away all mental capacity, and so, at the time, I was, like, 15, 16. 16 was probably, like, my peak, and it was really, really bad, and it lasted, till, like, the end of high school, but, great timing.
Right? I was
No,
gonna
thank
ask
you so
about that.
much.
Like, how did that manifest in high school, and, like, in what ways? What
Mhm.
behaviors?
Um, honestly, like I was counting, like, my steps,
Oh, okay.
like,
Yeah.
legit, like, I was counting my steps, I was counting my bites of food. For me, it was a lot to do with, like, numbers and the significance of certain numbers, and, like, it all came back to safety. So if I ever had this, like, just, like, feeling anxious feeling of not feeling safe or someone not being safe, or it would, like, or me not doing a certain, like, ritual, or not counting my steps, or oh, no, it was really fucked.
Yeah, no, I
You
have,
can laugh about it.
I have
Yeah,
one of my really good friends, same thing, like, he will count the steps to, like, his
mhm.
bed and back, and he'll touch the
Yes,
handle. So
touching
I
things,
just
yeah,
noticed little things like that. It's like he'll touch it a few times before opening and then count the steps to the bathroom and back to the room.
yeah.
Very subtle, but, like, because
Uh-huh.
it's like elementary school, I've picked it up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm laughing about it now because, I have done so much healing around it, and it really wasn't funny at all. Like, it honestly was like a prison of the mind, and a prison in the mind, and it was subtle, and I was hiding it, and no one knew about it. I didn't talk to anyone about it, and it got to the point where it was so bad that it was noticeable, where, like, my friends, or I mean, I didn't even have any close friends, because if you're hiding something so big, you
Right.
can't really be truly vulnerable. I
Right.
mean, like, with someone, you're not building true friendships, you know? Like, I had very, like, transactional friendships in high school where it was like, we were in class together, we're friends. Like, we're
Right.
in dance class together, we're friends. But, like, I'd only see you there. Like, they
Gotcha.
weren't real.
They
Yeah.
weren't coming over to hang out afterwards. Yes.
Yeah. And my childhood friendships all kind of dwindled because of it. So I just felt, like, super isolated in
Right.
my mind and, like, physically. Like, yeah, it was wild.
Mm.
Um And at the time, I mean, like, let's, like, rewind. This is like 2011, which, I mean, you'll remember, like, mental health was like, you know, not
Yes.
now when we talk about mental health, it's kind of cool. Like, people love talking about it, like,
Mm.
or mindsets, and, like, how to improve yourself as a person. None of that was, like, cool at that time. It was considered like you were ostracized for it,
Of
and
course.
you were bullied for it, and I was bullied for it. If people noticed, they'd be like, "What is she," like, basically, "What is she doing?"
What's wrong with her?
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What's wrong with her?
Right.
Instead of, "Hey, is maybe she needs some support," you know?
Right.
Like, the narrative, I don't think it's completely switched, personally. I think
Yeah.
we're getting
I would
there.
agree. I would agree.
Mhm.
Slowly, we're getting there.
We're slowly getting there, but, like, that's the narrative switch of, like, "Oh my god, what's wrong with her? Like, why is she like that?" Instead of, wow, wait a second, my friend is, or this young girl, my peer is, something's up. Maybe I should approach her and be like, "Hey, like, are you okay? Can I
Mm,
sit with you?"
right.
you know? And
Yes.
like that wasn't a thing. I like never received that, not from anyone, and not from my even like my parents. And I was approached by my parents to like go see like a psychotherapist, and they wanted to put me on medication. And I was like, oh my god, that was like truly a wake up call. I was like, I was like, no, 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 no. Like I'm not doing that. Like,
Good for you.
because the thing with like, and I can only really speak for myself, right? But when you and because like this, it led into like depression and other and like just awful headspaces personally. But it's like when you're dealing with that, sometimes like sometimes you're like so unaware and you kind of block it all out and you're just like in that world. But
Hmm.
other times you kind of come out of it and you notice you're like I would be like tapping something or like touching something a certain number of times. And sometimes I'd catch myself, Patrick, and I'd be like, girl, what are you doing?
I love that's the awareness piece.
Yeah, like, girl, that's weird. Like, come on, like, let's get it together. And it would be kind of like silly,
Yes.
and then I get frustrated that I couldn't, Um, and so I think like that was I had always had that, or like that piece of awareness that
Mhm.
the seed of the self started coming forward and was like, hey, like what's going on here? And I think truly that wake up call of like not wanting to get um, on like medication or get it taken care of in that way, like
Right.
really woke me up. I also I was an athlete and I injured myself because I was counting my steps. And like, if you're like running and counting your steps, you're
Right.
not actually running in a true gait. And so I actually hurt my hip flexor and my knee,
Ooh.
which like metaphysically is also related to the ego and like emotions, which I was not, which were obviously in the background, things that I wasn't dealing with,
Right.
Um, and so it's just funny how it's all related. But anyways, I had these injuries, and so I couldn't work out anymore. And then it led to like weird eating habits where I was counting my bites of food, and I actually ended up gaining like 35 pounds within like a 2 month period. And
Oh,
it
wow.
yeah, and this was, like, around prom, and I hate like, it was just oh, it was so nightmarish, but, like, it was the worst, and I gained this weight, and I didn't, like, look big, but I looked puffy. I remember
Right.
seeing a photo of myself, and I was like, that's not me, that's not
Right.
me, like, I don't know who that girl is, I don't know, I can't like understand her. I don't know like that's not me. And it
Mhm.
was at that point where everything kind of like collided where I just made, and this is a really good point that I want to get into.
Yeah, of course.
Um is like you just kind of reach like that breaking point of where you can no longer tolerate the pain, and you have to you make a decision. And for anyone that's ever like, I want to make a certain change in my life, whatever that is, you have to get to that point where the pain hurts so much, where you can't stand it anymore, and you make a decision. Or
Mhm.
maybe there's no pain, but you're just like, I need to make a decision now. I just need to do it. And
Mhm.
I came to that point, and I remember it clearly, like it was yesterday. I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Mhm.
And literally from that day forward, I started, and I was like 18 at this point, 17, 18. And I started researching like how to rewire the brain from OCD,
Wow.
how to holistically heal from anxiety, how to holistically handle stress. Like I got into meditation and yoga and breath work. And again, um, at this time, I also like, I was just I would invest in anything. Like I was like, I'm just like curious, like how do I heal this? Like
Yes.
how do I make myself just feel 1% better?
Mhm.
Um and ended up going to school for psychology, and then it led me down a path of like really diving into like Joe Dispenza's work and a few other people in the space. I got into like hypnosis at that time,
Okay.
just a bunch of things, and that's like really where it all kind of stemmed from. And then just from that point forward, I've just been deepening, I guess, like um my 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 research and my time and my energy in like neuroplasticity and NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and
Right.
body work, energy work, like anything I can get my hands on. But yeah, that's where it all started.
Yes. Wow. No, thank you for sharing that. There's so much. There's so much in that story, and I'm glad that you were vulnerable and shared that. And it really comes to, like Derek's mentioned here. You got sick and tired of being sick and tired. He's like, he knows it well,
Totally.
right?
Yes.
Thank you for that
Mhm.
comment, Derek. And that's really what it is. Like, I've been in that space too, where it's just like almost that. And for me, there was a lot of periods where, like, why are you still here? Why are you still here? You
Mhm.
are better than this. Why are you still here? But it's
Mhm.
a journey. It was a process. You said when you looked and you noticed everything kind of collided. Like, I had multiple collisions
Yeah.
before
Yeah. Yeah.
I finally
I
was
I I like
like,
calling them spiritual smackdowns too.
right. It definitely was. It was like, my stubborn or like attached to other things, ego, material, whatever else, and just like not
Mhm.
really accepting it. But it had to be that way for me. And I'm here
Mhm.
now. But like, no, I love, there's so much power in your story, because I feel like hearing that journey is so empowering, and facing it, like when you just stop to face it instead of running
Mhm.
away from it too, right? And that's the next thing that I wanted to talk about. Is I wanted to discuss even ego, but more like the shadow, like the work that needs to be done, the things that we
Mhm.
suppress, right? And I know that you mentioned it on your website as well, and I think you kind of just touched on it now, right? Because, like, I feel like
Mhm.
doing the shadow work is like finding your self-awareness, which
Totally.
helps us understand ourselves, helps us understand our calling, our path, our purpose. And I
Mhm.
feel like it's a full-time job. It's something that we constantly do, is work on our shadow work, because
Mm.
to
I have a perspective on that, but yes. Yes and no. Yes and
okay,
no.
okay, okay, yeah, yeah, no, let me know your thoughts. Good.
Well, so okay, so hear me out.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. This is
Um, this is actually something that, like, I actually don't ever really talk about this, and, I actually believed that as well for a really long time. I was like, "Okay, like, we're always doing shadow work. We're always, like, kind of like, dig, 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 dig. Like, what's underneath that? What does this mean? Like, where's that coming from? Blah, blah, blah." Which is, in my opinion, what shadow work really entails is, like, really I mean, in all honesty, it's just, like, spending that time just, unraveling yourself.
Mhm,
Like, there's a really popular book. It's just called, I think it's just called Shadow Work, and it's like a journal, and you just like go through all these questions of
mhm,
like unraveling the self, and I love it. And it's just like even just having that book and spending time doing it is you just investing the time to sit with those shadow parts of yourself that you might be neglecting, that you might not be completely aware of, that you might be like uh, and when I say not be aware of, it's like things that are shadowy, not negative, not negative. I don't like using that word, but like you might consciously not be aware of it,
right, right, and
right?
that's right. And that's what I
Yes.
meant. It's like those things. And I guess,
Yeah.
to elaborate it, like when I said a full time, like I feel like it's there, right?
Yes.
So
Okay.
it's just kind of there. It's hiding. Maybe it's
Yes.
secrets. Maybe it's things you're not comfortable with, but they are there, and it's good to
True.
be aware of it. Is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying. Because like
Yes.
the other thing that I see, and I see this a lot, is like, people who almost, like, get stuck there, like,
Mm,
always doing the shadow work, like,
absolutely.
always looking for more, always digging to see, like, what's beneath the surface and
There.
what's the yeah, what is well, what's that subconscious pattern that I keep repeating? Like, I need to figure it out, and, like, they're constantly doing that, and there's nothing there's nothing wrong with that, it's just that, like, there sometimes we get addicted to being in that space, of
Yes.
like doing the work all the time.
Right.
And like the other part of it is also just like really truly embodying and integrating the things that you want to create and call in and be more of, and not necessarily always healing what you've been
Of
and
course.
what
Of
you are.
course. Of course. Yes. No, absolutely. I agree. I feel like it's that balance, right? I feel
Yeah.
like we don't
Yeah.
want to avoid those things and just turn a blind eye to it. We want to be aware. And I feel like it helps what we're trying to call in. But to be stuck in one place or fixated and like, well, I need to do my shadow work before I can move forward. You like you
Totally.
don't want to be stuck in that pattern as well.
And
And
you don't want to go on the other side and then just like spiritually bypass everything either.
right, exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
right? So it's this dance. It's this dance. It's like finding this
Totally.
in it. But like, and then I'll ask your question on this as well. And anyone who's watching, if you have any questions, definitely ask regarding shadow work, anything like that. But I was thinking, like, how does because sometimes what I feel, let me know your shot thoughts, Kelly. Sometimes
Yeah.
people because it's uncomfortable to look under there or look over or look behind and check. Sometimes we
Look
suppress
under
it.
the hood.
You're right. We're like, let me just, whether I self medicate or whether I put my attention on something else, but I ignore it because I don't want to spend
Mhm.
the time on it. And I just feel like it's like personal hygiene. Like it's okay to look, but sometimes I feel like we suppress it. What are your thoughts on that, or how can people get to a place where they can start to be comfortable with looking in these
Mhm.
places?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Um, okay, I have two things kind of pop up when you ask
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And one of them is reminding yourself, and sometimes you can't know this until you do it,
Hmm.
but you're not gonna like, you're gonna be okay if you discover what's under the hood. You're gonna be okay.
Hmm.
And I think there's just like this fear. It's almost like, well, what is that resistance that I feel? Like, why am I not showing up to do? And I actually like I do a lot of shadow work with my clients, obviously.
Okay. Okay.
And a big piece of coaching is accountability. And I'll be like, okay, like where are you at? And I'll give them work to do in
Got
between sessions. And if they are like neglecting the work or like they're not doing it, I'm always like, why is that? Why aren't you diving into this? Like, why aren't you sitting with it? And they're like, well, and then they're like, I don't know. And sometimes the reason why we don't approach something is in the subconscious. And we're not conscious of why we're doing it, but the subconscious belief could be a fear of what could happen if I see what's under the hood? What would happen if I knew the truth about myself?
it.
And
Right.
like sometimes that fear prevents us from actually just like doing it.
Right.
So, what I'll say towards that is you never actually have to, yes, you're doing it for yourself and you're doing it, I guess, like alone, but you never have to do it fully alone. You can always get support to move through some of those pieces because sometimes they can be heavy. They're not always like, it's not always the most it's not like a lit Friday night thing to do, you know? Like, so you dive into shadow work. Um,
It's not. Hey, what you guys doing? Why don't you come by? We're doing shadow work. I've
we're
got
doing
this.
shadow work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring some wobbly pops. We're gonna have a great
Right.
time.
Some kombucha. Just sit down and we'll do some shadow work. Make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, like I guess like it's just like not super glamorous. Now, like once you go into it, you can get really addicted, which is like people do get like addicted to it.
Right.
Um and it can be really insightful and it can really help you grow because when you start to see those parts of yourself you create so much more once you clear things out, once you like heal those parts of yourself that are taking up so much space. It's almost like what's underneath the iceberg. Once you uncover that, it's like, whoa, so much is available to me. And I didn't realize how much energy I was pouring into these like belief systems and parts of my identity that just like weren't even aligned. And now I feel so free and now I feel lighter and I can go and do all these other things because I'm not in that fear state so consciously anymore. And like it just opens up so much opportunity and so many doors. Um, So I lost my train of thought there because I was just like, "Oh, it's so good."
No, it does. It does. It opens up so many opportunities, and that's why I feel like it's worth doing it. Like maybe
Totally.
it's going to be a little bit of uncomfort and pain, but it's
Mhm.
temporary versus a lifetime of pleasure. So it's like, why not
Yes.
go and do it? But like I've been there too. In the moment, we're not seeing that, right? We
Yeah.
just see the
Yeah.
challenge of it, and we're not on the other side. We're like, hey, get over here.
Yes.
I definitely love the way you put it, and that's why I wanted to speak to that because I feel like that it is part of it. They go hand in hand.
Mhm. And, like, as far as a piece of, or a tip or, like, something that people can do,
Yes,
like, to get started is and literally start anywhere. Like, the thing is, like, I obviously work with clients. I also run some live events, and I ran an event this past weekend, like in my home with a bunch of girls. It was like a little goddess circle. And so many of the girls were like, I've been wanting to just sit with myself and like journal and like ask myself like why I'm experiencing certain things or why this part of my life isn't so great right now. And just coming here and having a place and having like a guided system and someone to facilitate and someone to just be like ask me a question, I just journal it out and just like showing up for that is all I needed. And then
mm,
like they get that breakthrough and it's like sometimes you just have to carve out time and
yes,
show up. And like I'm telling you, the difference, oh, this is with everything. The difference between like the people who are like healing, successful, abundant, like rich in relationship, rich in wealth. They're whole the difference is that they're showing up. Okay, they're just doing it.
right,
They're doing the thing,
yes,
and we complicate. And this like comes. I'm also super into health and wellness, fitness, and I think about this all the time with like working out and building muscle or getting lean and building like a really strong physique. And the difference between having a beautiful body, I shouldn't say beautiful body, but like a beautifully fit, like toned body and one that is just like less energized and maybe like less toned is that you're just showing up more consistently.
right,
And
yes,
that is the work of the self as well, you
mhm,
know? We can't create what we don't show up for and what we don't put energy into,
yes,
right?
yes. Well said. Well said. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. And I
Mhm.
wanted to, I still want to get into your design. But a thought came up. Yeah, a thought came up. We're gonna get into Kelly's design because everyone knows that I add human design to my podcast interviews, and we're constantly talking about energy, but we're also talking about alignment today too, and I think it fits well, and I wanted to see what really resonates with you. But I also wanted to talk to you about, because you focus a lot on millennials and you talk about burnout just before we get into the human design piece, right? And
Yeah.
I wanted you to speak to, and I know you're not working with the Gen X and Gen Zs, it's mostly millennials, but we'll let that slide. We don't feel offended by it.
It's
But
like, I'll work with you guys too. I'll work with you guys too. I love you.
but really, I wanted you to quickly maybe explain before getting to your design the difference
Mhm.
between overwhelm, which people experience, and
Mhm.
burnout, right?
Mm.
Because people, as people are going and they're spinning their wheels, sometimes they're like, I'm overwhelmed, or maybe they're using the words interchangeably, but there is
Mm.
burnout, and then
Mhm.
it's overwhelmed by everything, and maybe you can just highlight where people might be.
Right. I mean, like, and this isn't like the Webster's dictionary description, but in my opinion, burnout is a real thing. Um, I've experienced it several times in my life. I'm sure most people have at some point. And then overwhelm is like another. And I've always looked at it as because I get most people when they come to me are like what Derek was mentioning, like sick and tired of being sick and tired. It's like
Mhm.
you just get to a breaking point, and that's usually when you're like, it's like a cry for either a call or a cry for help, and you put up your
Yes.
flag, and you're like, okay, like like someone. I can't do this alone anymore, and that's beautiful. I don't think anyone should feel like they have to do it alone. Um, Overwhelm is when I think about being overwhelmed, I think about my nervous system,
Mhm.
and I think about just like my nervous system being like, this is a lot to hold. Like I'm feeling like I can no long like I can't I don't know if I can hold all of this.
Right.
And what really supported me, especially when I worked in in a corporate role, I felt overwhelmed a lot. um,
We're gonna get into that today.
yeah, yeah, felt it a lot. I always like reminded myself, and like you can feel overwhelmed in so many parts of your life, but like I'd always just remind myself that like this is a season, and typically that's like burnout is not usually like usually a burnout is like you've gone through seasons of overwhelm and then you reach like burnout. You're like, okay, like I've been doing this a little too long. The signs, like my body's been screaming at me. I've been getting all the signs that I should like slow down and take a break or like reset or realign, and I'm not. And that's the misalignment when you feel and you see and you hear and you like get the nudges and you like, you get the call like you shouldn't be doing that, or like that's not right, it
Mhm.
doesn't feel right, like it's a no in your body, but you keep moving. That's misalignment. That can 1000% lead to burnout. It can 1000% lead to illness, injury, like pain, everything. I've been there. Like, and like I'm saying that super clearly because like our bodies respond to what's in alignment with us and what's not.
Well said.
Um, and vice versa when things
Yes.
are in alignment. Um, Overwhelm is like almost like imagine it like that season, or like you hear like that, you start to hear those voices, or you start to get that nudge. Or and when I say voices, that's just how my intuitive self, I like I hear. I'll have like a knowing, and I'll hear like a voice within me. We all have our way of connecting to our intuition and like our guides and whatever it is that you believe in, but our support systems. Um, and I think it's like that's like when you start to hear it and you're like, I'm working late a lot and I'm feeling a little like this is too much to hold, you know?
I do.
And like I feel like that's like you get to that point and that's when you get to make the decision if you want to can like continue being walking down that path, or, start setting some clear boundaries and start saying no and start making decisions that are in greater alignment, which isn't easy.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Because I know I've had that question, so I wanted you to touch on that as well, because I know you speak to that. And I think burnout is such a real thing. Like you said, it's like I've gone through overwhelm, a series of overwhelm, and now I'm done.
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
finished. I'm not excited to do it. There's no drive to do it. I could care less about the outcome, the money, the end result. I'm burnt out. And
Yeah,
that overwhelm, just like you said, it's like I love how you put it. It's like your nervous system can't carry anymore. So it's letting you know, like, hey, like there's stuff falling off the plate here. Like, help,
yeah,
like let's remove some of the
yeah,
stuff because I can't support all this on my own. Like you're gone past the threshold, so to speak. So I love the way you
yes.
described it. I love how you use the body and intuition to talk about that because I think that's so important. And I wanted to
Mhm.
get into your design too and see how things resonate with you because I know you're an intuitive person as am I. I love and I heard you say
Mhm.
how you hear things. So I wanted to speak about that too because I feel like it's really getting out of our heads and getting into our bodies. For some, it's easier than others. You mentioned you've
Ooh,
been
yes.
intuitive for a long time, so you're like, hey, and for some people, it's
That's
there.
brand new to them.
We're just yeah, we don't. We're like, what do you mean? What voices? Like,
I know I say that, and I'm like, people might be like, "This this girl, what's she talking about?
yeah,
Voices."
yeah, no, I get it. I completely get it. But and that's the thing. It's like I want us to really start bridging that because it's there
Mhm,
for all of us. But like, are we allowing it to happen? Are we allowing
mhm.
ourselves to hear it, or are we suppressing it because of conditioning and we're in our mind? So we're logically thinking through it when your body's like, "Help! Stop! No! Here, let me throw some overwhelm at you and
Hmm.
see if you'll hear me now." Right? Let me collapse this, or make you feel some pain in the body, but From
Yeah.
a human design perspective, and I know you know about human design, and I'll touch at a high level, like for anyone
Mhm.
joining who doesn't know, like it's a synthesis of modern and ancient sciences, and it looks at astrology and the chakra and the I Ching, quantum mechanics, and really it's a tool for self-discovery, right? Energy management, manifestation, and there are 5 different types. We looked at Kelly's type, and we're going to talk about it today. But every type has a distinct characteristics that sets them apart. Like almost personality traits, personal psychology, talents, gifts, shadows that are attached with it as well. But it really gives you this insight into your essence. It's really a tool meant for experimentation, so you can start to see what works for you, what doesn't, and that's what I tell people.
Mhm.
Just like it's a practice tool to get more
Mhm.
intuitive and more aligned, especially if you're not aligned with your intuition, right? I think it's great, and then it allows you to understand your energies as well, right? So out of the 5 types, Kelly is a generator type. And again, for the types, for those that don't know, when
Oh,
I
wait,
talk,
I thought I was a manifesting generator.
let's look at you, Kelly. 1 second. Motor to the throat. Kelly, sorry, manifesting generator. Yes.
I was like, I'm the most MG person.
Yes, manifesting generator. I was like, yes, Kelly's a manifesting generator. And for the manifesting generator, and I'm a manifesting generator as well. And Kelly
You get
is
it.
a sacral authority, and I'm like an emotional authority. And I'll get into that. But for your types, it's like your energy type is your aura. For those that don't know, it's that energetic field that extends like 6 feet around you, and this is how you communicate with your frequency, your energy, and it
Mhm.
kind of governs how you interact with others, right? And we all operate in a different way. But it's great because when you understand your aura, you kind of understand how to move through life with ease and with
So
flow,
cool.
right? Which is super beautiful. And then
Mhm.
for you, you're a manifesting generator. So you kind of
Mhm.
the great builders, you're here to create, you're here to move, you have this sacral energy. You also have this enveloping aura, but you also have this ability to create with the manifesting generators, right? So it's like your strategy is really to kind of wait to respond, initiate, and then go do what you're supposed to do, right? You have this sustainable
Mhm.
energy, this sustainable
Mhm.
endurance. You have the ability to work long hours. So if you're tied to any corporate thing, you can work the long hours. You're designed to kind of do what you love, right? And really
Mhm.
use that life force energy to really do the things that you love. And your gift is your mastering skills over time, but you're also manifesting things into fruition. You're bringing these things into fruition. The manifesting generator is not meant to live in a linear fashion. So,
You
right.
don't say.
So it's not about it. So from a conditioning standpoint, it's all like well, you get this one job and you go to high school and you go to university and you go to college and you find your career and you stay there, right? And you
Mhm.
build and family and what are you doing moving to from Toronto to Vancouver? Like what's going on, right? But it's
Right.
manifesting generator is there to show people also another way of doing things. We're not
Mhm.
linear, so we're supposed to try different things. You can skip steps because you have the ability to move quickly. Not everyone will move as quickly as you. And
Mhm.
it's not a linear path because you're supposed to absorb all your experiences and then allows you to have a different insight and perspective because you've tasted different things, different flavors. You're there to try the buffet table and say, oh, let me try everything to see what I like versus
Mm.
let me just have this and I'm going to stick with this because I'm going to eat this meal every day, 7 days a week because I know I like it. You're like, let me try, let me experiment, right? And that manifests in so many different ways, right?
So many different ways. As you're saying that, I'm like, I'm familiar with that, but I'm also just like thinking right now, like, that's manifesting in really wild ways, even just in my current life.
Is it? Is it more from
Yeah.
a career or like from a uh, career perspective, or just like life and personal, or both?
I think like more clear, the clearest that I've seen it is in my career, like as far as just like noticing that pattern. But I think even just in my lifestyle and what I've done in my life and like how I've approached big decisions in my life has been like that. But I'm even
Okay.
just thinking, honestly, like minor things where it's like just like what I eat for dinner and how I choose like certain restaurants or like in my romantic life, like just like how I choose partners and
Right.
get into relationship. It shows up everywhere. It doesn't just live like in one corner.
Yes. Right. And it's beautiful, and like you're as the manifesting generator, as you know, for both of us, like our strategy is really to respond, inform, and then go and create. So you're supposed to live this nonlinear path. When we're forced into this kind of box, and
Mhm,
that's when we're going to experience our not self, our not self esteem themes, our frustration and anger. When we're in alignment, we're going to have satisfaction. So when we're either told we need to just do things a certain way, that can create it. When we're not allowing our creativity to flow, that can create this
mhm,
not self. When we're living in this linear path because conditioning has said you're
mhm.
supposed to live your life this way, or our parents or culture have said you should be doing this, Kelly,
Oh,
Patrick,
the
you should
shoulds.
be doing that, right? That's when we're going to experience it, because that manifesting part of us wants to go out and create and do things a little bit differently, and then bring all those resources back and say, you know what, based on my life experiences, now I could do what I'm supposed to do because I've had all the experiences and it makes sense. The big
Mhm,
piece
mhm,
for us when it comes to our strategy and our authority is, learn to your way to respond, right? So as a manifesting generator, we want to wait for because you have this enveloping in this aura, you want to wait for things to come in and respond to those things. Ask your
mhm.
sacral very closed-ended yes or no questions, like, do I want to eat here, or do I want to eat there, or do I want sushi for dinner, yes or
I was
no?
just thinking that. Do I want sushi for dinner?
There. Right, it has to be closed-ended, and you'll feel that sacral gut response. Are you sure, did you mean that? Do you really want,
No,
you
like, I'm actually serious.
really?
As you were saying as you were we were talking about this, I'm like, "Yes, yes." Like, I literally was like, "That's how I decide what to eat." Like, I'm a very intuitive eater, and I think that's also where, like, the MG comes out a lot when
Yes.
it comes to, like, and that took time as well to, like, develop just, like, intuitive eating styles based on, like, what just feels good
Mhm.
and what my body's craving. But, yeah, I was really thinking about I was like, "Should I get sushi? Does that feel like a yes?"
Right, and it's that, right? And I know for some people
Mhm,
they're not attuned with that, but I always tell everyone just to practice it, try small things, asking yourself, and then it can come into like bigger things, like, do I want to move from Toronto to Vancouver? Yes or no. It's going to be there. You're going to energy. Your body's going to open up. The answers are always
mhm,
there. Where we lose track is where we think it through. When I look at your design, Kelly's design, she has her head
mhm,
center open, and the head takes in questions from the environment, takes in questions from the external things. It's for inspiration questions. So it's constantly picking up. And because you have an open crown, like me, our
mhm.
designs are similar. I'm constantly getting
Cool.
inspiration from the outside world. I'm constantly getting ideas from the
Mhm,
environment, and then I'm kind of processing it and getting these questions. But it's like I can't let that override my instinctual,
mm,
because that's when it's like, do I want to do this? And then I start overthinking it, and then I'm taking it away
mm.
from my sacral. I should always just allow the thoughts to come in, but don't be attached to the thoughts. Just kind of
Right,
observe the environmental. And because with us, when you have an open crown,
right.
it's easy for us to get conditioned by things, right? Because it's open. So we're going to absorb. If we're with someone who has a colored in crown and they have
Yeah.
very strong opinions with things, it can influence us. So
Mhm.
we always need to just see the energy and allow it to pass, but not attach to it, and just be like, that's a good thought. I'm going to sit on it. What does my gut say? Is this a hell yes
Ooh,
or a hell no? That's how we need,
ooh.
right?
Yeah. You know what's so interesting that you bring that up? Because that's I feel like that's a theme that's coming up a lot, at least for myself, and, like,
Yes.
um, an affirmation I've been telling myself is, like, "Just, like, do you. Just be you.
Mhm.
Just always be you." Just like when you walk into a room, you shouldn't feel like you have to always be like super bubbly and smiling. Sometimes you can just walk in and be like, what am I feeling? Sometimes my truth is very like bubbly and like fun. And like that's just like who I am and I love it. And like I embody like I love that part of me. But then there's other parts of me that I'll walk in a room and I'm like, I'm so tired today. And like I think the more that like we fake just like who we are, the
Hmm.
more we fall into misalignment. And it's
Yes.
just been this like theme just recently where it's like just be fully you wherever you are.
Yes, absolutely. We have to, right? And that's when you'll feel in alignment. So it's like as you're responding to these things as a manifesting generator, you're responding. The one piece that we have to do from a communication standpoint is just kind of inform as we do things. So,
Oh.
you have this manifesting ability, you have this sacral life source energy, so you respond to
Mhm.
your environment, and it's not that we need to ask permission, but it's almost like just let people know what we are planning to do, what we're planning to create, and it's not a do you agree with what I'm about to do, but it's kind of how we respond to our environment. So when we start to create with such speed, people feel like they've been informed of if we're pivoting, if we're doing something different, if we decided, you know what, I'm going to course
Mm.
correct and I want to do this instead. I'm going to move to Thailand. I'm going to go here now. I think this is the best route for me. I'm responding to my environment, but
Yeah.
for others, it could be throw them off, right? So it's this just informing and it creates more cohesion for our environment. But what
Mm.
are your thoughts? I want to hear just kind of what has resonated and what doesn't and what feels like.
Oh, I mean, it all resonates. And I think just like that piece of informing is that something that um doesn't always come naturally to MGs or like and like
Yes.
something that we should practice, but like don't necessarily practice all the time.
I like that. So I see where you are, Kelly. You're choosing your cards. So yeah, so for manifestors and
Mm.
manifest MGs, it's really because of our ability to go from 0 to 100 with such speed.
Yeah, like
And
that's a real thing. That's facts.
It's
Yes.
it's facts. I'm the same way, and we
Yes.
don't necessarily want to be told what to do. So,
Mhm.
and we have the
Yeah.
idea and we want to run with it and we move quickly. So it's something that has to be practiced, and we just have to understand that informing is not asking; it's informing. But
Yeah,
it
okay.
helps people when we're like, "This is what we have decided."
Yes,
it
I'm doing
allows
this.
it allows
You
them
can't
right.
tell me what to do.
Exactly. But yeah, a little softer though.
I get it. Yeah, yeah.
But it allows
Um,
others to
not as
just
sassy. Got
yes, and it allows
it.
others to just decide, okay, do I also want to be part of this venture? Do I want to tag along? Do I want to come with? Do I want to
Right.
revamp and make this happen with you? Right. But it's really just
Mm,
letting MGs. I work with a lot of MGs, but letting them know like it just add that to your strategy because what we'll notice is we'll get less resistance. And then when we get
mm,
resistance, then we feel frustrated because maybe we don't inform, so people feel frustrated. So then it feels like they're
mhm,
stopping us from pursuing our dreams, our goals, and
mm.
then the friction and the anger and frustration kicks in. Right?
Oh,
Yes.
this is huge.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Right?
that's actually a really big piece that I was like just like less aware of, and I really noticed it,
Yes.
especially like with this move, or honestly, any big transitions in my life, or anytime I made a decision to like, yeah, move abroad, or like to start my business or whatever it was, it always felt like I was like, "Okay, yes, I'm a full yes to this. This feels so right." And, like, it's that MG energy, like, literally going from 0 to 100. It's like, I will
Yes.
literally once the decision is made and, like, you're like, "Mhm, I'm doing it," it's like I found my apartment in Vancouver. I literally, like, within a week, basically, I made this all happen. Um, And, like, that's MG energy of being able to, like, make those changes so quickly, skipping steps, all that jazz.
Oh
And,
yeah.
like, I really saw it unfold, but in my previous and, like, I informed I definitely informed more people along the way, this
This
time
time.
more
Okay. Good.
openly, and it wasn't something that I consciously knew I should do, so this is cool,
Okay.
and, like,
Okay.
yeah, but in the
Yes.
past, I definitely didn't do that as much, and it definitely caused friction internally and within in those relationships.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
huge.
It's
That's
huge
huge.
because it's I'm the same way. I still it's almost I just don't feel the need to inform sometimes because like I've gone through it, I've decided, so the decision has been made. But I also
Yeah,
realized that people just feel there's a peace of mind when you inform them. I like
yeah,
in pre human design, I wasn't informing anyone, and it's everyone would just be like bewildered and like not understand, like, well, why would you do that, or how come you let me
right.
know? And in my mind, I'm like, well, why does it?
It
Why?
makes so much sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, it feels good.
but by incorporating it and embodying it, I've noticed that there's absolutely less friction, and the responses when I inform are different too. Even when I add it to like my business and my
Mm,
work, it's like, I'll be creating something. I wait to respond if someone DMs or someone responds to me or initiate something, then I respond to that. And then I kind of just initiate, like, I'll be putting this out. I'll be putting that.
right.
And that's me informing before it comes out. And before I used to feel awkward about doing that, but I've implemented it in my business
Mhm.
too. And it's like, oh, I'm glad that you mentioned that because that works with my timing, or I didn't know you were about to do something. So I'm getting a lot of that now, where before it felt icky
Mm.
almost to instant form. Right. So yeah,
Mhm,
definitely play with it. And then the last thing I'll get into is your
mhm,
profile. Right. So you're a 4-6 profile, and the profile is kind of
mhm,
this character that you play. Right. You're a 4-6. Yeah. You're a 4-6
mhm,
profile. So the four is on and I know I sent you this sheet, but if anyone's looking at your your body graph chart, on the right side is kind of your personality, your energetic aura when you came into the world. And then 88 days before conception is your design, the unconscious side. So you have the conscious in black, the unconscious, and then you have the planetary transits, and then you have your different gates in there. And if you look at the sun and earth gates, make up your profile. Your profile is like this character that you play, right? In this theme, it's kind of the character. So you are a 4-6. So if you'll look, you'll see a 4 in your sun, and then you'll see a 6 on the earth side. And your 4-6 profile is kind of like how you maneuver through life. Um, as a 4, you're an opportunist. It's about community. It's about people. It's about sharing things with others. It's about sharing things with your community, bringing the resources back, teaching the groups, the programming, doing the women's group in your right. It's that.
Whoa! I didn't realize that. That's so funny. That's yep.
And then your 6 side, and that's your conscious side. So you'll be very
Wow.
aware. Your 6 is your unconscious. This 6 is the role model. So we have the same profile as well. So with the 6, it's like
Mhm,
you live in these waves is like stages. That's a better word.
mm,
So the first 30 years, it's like you're learning through trial and error, through
mhm,
experience. You're going to go through these things. It's going to feel maybe chaotic at sometimes, misaligned at sometimes. You've been here to there. Like, even when I read your story, just going from here, moving to Thailand, to corporate, to this. So it's like you're
yeah,
perfectly in your design, and that's going to be the
mhm,
unconscious side. Just realizing that I have this experience within my first 30 years, and then the next 20 years, from 30 to 50, you're going to shift again, and then
mhm,
50 on. And it's like the idea is you want to gather all those experiences and then
mhm,
really come into yourself and be like,
mhm,
based on all my experiences, this is the wealth of knowledge that I've gained, and now I can really
mm,
come back and share this with my community, with my people, living in that 4 line now let me share all these experiences, living as a manifesting
mm,
generator. I've traveled, I've done so much non-linear, I've gathered all my resources, the knowledge and the wisdom, and I can
mhm.
share it with everyone, right? So that's
Super
how I see
cool.
you living. Very cool, very cool.
That's so cool, and I'm turning 30 this year, so it does feel very, like, um, things definitely feel less, not that life felt chaotic, but like I definitely was in that. I was familiar with the six part of the profile, not so much
Okay.
the four actually, but
Okay.
and I knew that my life was like basic up to 30, 30 to 50, 60, and then 60
Yes.
plus. And
Yes.
someone described it to me as like from 0 to 30, it's like you're building the foundation of the house.
Hmm.
And you're like putting up, you like are setting the base and you're putting up the walls and you're building the house. And then past 30, when you're in that second stage, that second wave, you're now sitting on top of the house. Or like you're
Yes.
building the roof. Yeah,
Yes.
you're building the roof and you're like, putting in the furniture and like
Yes.
you're making it a home. And
Yes.
then the last stage, now you're sitting on the roof and you're like, okay, like come to me and like I'll tell you how I built this house, you know?
Yes. Right. That's what it is, right? And it's
Mhm,
I just find it to be so beautiful. So I love that you're living in your design, and I love that anything
mhm,
that added to it so you can continue to living it. But when I look at you, it looks like you're embodying it, and you're doing it the way you're supposed to. And that's the big piece that I always want people to get out of, is just know that everyone's path is different, and it gives
mhm,
you more permission to do what you're doing, because you're like, I'm living in alignment. I'm living by my design. I'm listening to my body. I'm eating right. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that makes the experience beautiful. So that is that piece.
yeah, I love that. Human design is like so cool and so helpful.
That's awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed.
Yeah.
Haley, I'm so sorry. I know, like, I took up so much of your time here, but
Okay, it's all
we were
good.
we were getting into the human design and everything, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So before we wrap up here, again, I
Mhm,
want to thank you for your time today. This has been amazing. We've gone way over. She's been really generous, people. So if you don't know, we've gone way over, but Kelly's amazing. And I
mhm,
thank you for your time and all the knowledge. The question that I always ask people at the end of the show is,
mhm.
what does it mean to you from a transformation perspective to go from raw to real? How would you
Mm.
describe that? What does that mean to you?
Ooh, what comes to me first is honesty and curiosity.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and really simply just like what is when I hear raw and when I hear real, it's like just like being incredibly curious and honest about like what's there for us.
Yeah.
And I think there gets to be so much more of that. And like Um, we were talking about this prior to recording, just like the freedom that exists when you do allow yourself to be more raw and more real and
Mm.
more honest. And
Yes.
it doesn't feel like that's what you're gonna get. I feel so uncomfortable sometimes to like get to that point, but it like I think the payoff is really beautiful and it's
Mhm.
felt.
Yes. Well
Yeah.
said. Well said. Kelly, Gallo, thank you for joining us today. For those that tuned in,
Mhm.
Derek, for your comment, really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. This is Patrick Dankwa, Kelly Gallo, joining you, signing off.
Bye.